Hey guys, what's up? It's Minolta1034 here, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about Destiny. Now I know some of you guys might be Halo fans and you might be saying, oh, Minolta, stop talking about Destiny, but I'm going to talk to you today about Bungie. So stick with me, I promise you're going to enjoy the video. So I wanted to talk about why Destiny came out kind of half-baked, why it seemed like there wasn't quite enough content for the game, and why it seemed like certain aspects of it weren't finished at all. But in order to talk about Destiny, like I said, I really want to talk about Bungie. Now, Bungie's always been sort of a unique game development studio. Now, obviously, today, it seems like every game studio has like a kooky, wacky CEO. The thing is, why does it matter that Bungie is like a fun studio? Or why does it matter that a studio has an identity at all? Well, it's because branding studios is actually really important these days. The reason for this is because games are fun. Studios are filled with fun people. They're entertainment products, and building a brand around your studio ensures future revenue for whatever game you put out. Yes, Bungie is the Halo studio, but the next game that they put out, whether it's Destiny or whatever, was bound to draw in fans. There were fans of Bungie. Now, this isn't a new concept. There's lots of developers out there that have been doing this for a long time. Lots of companies out there that have developed a very specific fan base around, a certain level of product, and obviously this strategy doesn't always work. If you release a bunch of crappy games, no one's going to be a fan of your studio, but for the most part it does seem to be very lucrative, and it does ensure future revenue, because if people liked your old products, then absolutely they're going to be paying attention to whatever your new one is going to be. That's right, I'm talking about fanboys. I'm talking about the people that love whatever you're going to put out, no matter what it is. People that aren't objective. Now, I think fanboy is certainly a term of extreme bias, but there are absolutely just fans built around companies and corporations based on their track record of producing good products. It doesn't matter if you're Apple or Ford or Microsoft or IBM. You've got a certain segment of the population that are going to be really into your stuff, because you've been releasing decent stuff, and who are probably going to stick by you when things maybe are not so good. This core group of fans is really important, and it becomes more important as you release a new or different product with something like, for instance, Destiny. Now, companies love fanboys because, obviously these are people that are going to go out there, they're going to evangelize the product, whatever it may be, a video game or a movie or whatever else. And so getting fanboys or passionate fans or anything like that is really important. It was possible to do this back in the day, before the internet came around, through, blanket advertising and stuff. There's always been corporations trying to set themselves apart by, subscribing to a specific ideology or espousing a specific set of values, but it wasn't really a very effective two-way street. A lot of the times you would just get that in an ad, something on the TV, the radio, or something like that. The internet's allowed companies to make huge leaps in terms of creating personal relationships and using that to market their products. You see this a lot. There'll be a sick kid who got an awesome game package from a developer, or maybe someone who's been a fan of a game for many years, but their disc finally broke down and they wrote the developer, and the developer sent them a new copy along with some goodies. Doing stuff like that doesn't take a lot of effort for the studios or the marketing department or whoever's involved in that, but it can have huge gains in the social media world. That post getting to the front page of Reddit will affect how all 300,000 people who viewed it see that game company. The internet has just made it very easy for companies to interact on you on a very personal level. I'm not just talking about like, I like Ford, I'm kind of a Chevy guy, something like that. No, I'm talking about the fact that in your Facebook feed right now, there will be updates from like your grandma interspersed with information about McDonald's or American Eagle jean shorts or something like that. It's not like Facebook is just a family place or just a social area. No, your social circle has now expanded to not only include your friends and family, but to also include the companies and products that you like. I don't know if this is necessarily a bad thing, but it's definitely something to think about. Obviously, corporations have had corporate identities for a long time, but they've definitely advanced in recent years. Now, what does all this have to do with Bungie? Well, like I said, corporations are trying to become your friends, but obviously you're not just going to be friends with anybody. You want to be friends with the cool people, right? You want to be friends with somebody that you like. And so corporations have to have a personality or an identity, and that has to be created, either artificially or just through the general culture of the company. And this is where Bungie comes in. See, Bungie has been making games for quite a while, and their corporate identity was established long ago. Now, I wouldn't call it corporate by any stretch of the imagination. If you read any interview, talk to anybody who's ever worked at Bungie, the first thing you're going to hear is that it's very informal. Fans of Bungie will talk to you about the seventh column, world domination, all of that stuff that Bungie created, but not out of, I think, a specific marketing plan or strategy. It's more just the internal DNA of the company. A lot of that stuff goes back to way back in the day when it was like Jason Jones in a closet typing away. So a lot of that feels very real to people. Not only was Bungie developing one of the biggest games in the world, but they were also leading the development of online fan interaction. There's lots of really cool things that Bungie has done over the years to interact with fans online, from the basic stuff like weekly updates and obviously dropping into the BNet forums and everything like that, to some of the bigger things like Bungie versus the World or the Hump Day challenges that were really fun. There's been all sorts of community LANs, fan meetups. I mean, there's always a Bungie party at PAX. There's lots of fun stuff that Bungie has been doing over the years to connect and interact with their fans in a very personal way. So Bungie sort of has a leg up on the competition in this. But a lot of that cool, hip persona that Bungie has actually comes from a sort of anti-corporate place. Like I said, if you talk to anybody who's worked at Bungie, they're not a very corporate establishment, or at least they haven't been traditionally. And it's interesting that this corporate culture was actually one of the reasons Microsoft wanted to acquire them back in the day to develop Halo and the original Xbox console. It's obviously this interesting and unique creative environment that has allowed games like the Halo series to be created. It's obviously not a bad thing. However, I think this is also something that affects the development of their products. And I think that is what happened when Destiny was set to launch. Now, we know Destiny has been in development for quite a while, and we know the project has changed directions a number of times during the development. Now, this is totally par for the course for Bungie. Now, if you go back to Halo CE, you can find out that it was originally an RTS, and then it was moved and recoded to be a third-person shooter, and then the engine was totally torn down and rebuilt into the Halo CE we know today. It went through 3 different genres before settling on what they wanted to build. Now, I can't speak to the exact pressures and deadlines and everything that went on during the release of any of the Halo games. I didn't work at Bungie, but it seems like maybe Microsoft was a little bit more under the gun when it came to Bungie and their development of Halo. I mean, first of all, they had the whole console tied up in it, and Bungie's developers were actually helping build the original Xbox console. And so I think that maybe if Bungie had to take a little bit more time, especially if Microsoft was openly saying that they liked their anti-corporate attitude, and that makes sense. I mean, obviously, especially with Halo's huge success, I would imagine that Microsoft was sort of a slave to Bungie. There's going to be a bit of give and take there, and obviously Bungie couldn't just do whatever they want. But I do imagine that how popular Halo became gave Bungie a certain amount of leverage in their relationship with Microsoft. So fast forward a few years, and now Bungie's working on Destiny. Now the issue here is that Destiny's a little bit different in Halo in that, first of all, it's being developed across 4 different platforms, right? The PlayStation 3, the PlayStation 4 with the Xbox 360, and the Xbox One. So now, if you were Bungie, and maybe you were used to just developing for the Xbox, and, let's say you did have a different idea, or a change in direction that you wanted to do. Sure, it would take some time to rebuild for the Xbox and everything like that. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know exactly how the cross-platform systems between PlayStation and Xbox work and everything like that, but I do know that developing software for 4 completely different hardware platforms is going to be 4 times more complicated than developing just for one. So if you think about when Bungie was working on Halo, they were only ever working within the Xbox architecture, and so if changes or anything had to be made, it wasn't like 4 different sets of software had to be updated, it was just the one. Not only that, but Destiny is just a whole different beast than Halo. You know what I mean? It's that MMO RPG feel, and it's something that Bungie just hasn't done before. So I would imagine that to a certain extent, maybe the planning just wasn't quite there. Activision probably had a very specific set of deadlines, and I'm sure that Bungie was optimistic about hitting them, but when the rubber hit the road, I think things weren't quite ready. It seems like Bungie may have just bit off more than they could chew with the Destiny development process. Developing for new platforms, they'd never worked with PlayStation before, and working with a new publisher, Activision, was probably a whole new experience for them, and maybe didn't go exactly as was expected. Unfortunately, the contract with Activision was sizable, and I'd imagine the penalties for breaking it are huge. So I would guess that at a certain point during Destiny's development, a call had to be made to say, you know what, guys, we have to make a little bit of a compromise from the creative standpoint in order to relieve this economic pressure from our publisher. Now, if you were an old school Bungie employee, like say a Marty O'Donnell, maybe you wouldn't like that so much. Maybe you would be a little frustrated by the direction the studio is going, and maybe you'd decide to hit the road. I'm not saying that I know Marty O'Donnell feels like that. It just seems like it could be one possibility for the reason that after a long time working with a specific studio, and as things start to change, you just decide, hey, maybe this just isn't the place for me anymore. Not that that's a bad thing. Again, it's something that happens every day. I would like to address one thing. I mean, there's this whole idea of like the DLC on disc thing with Destiny, and I think it's unfortunate, but I would imagine that if it was that they had bit off more than they could chew, or that there was some snag in the development process. What would look even worse would be to say, like, you know what, guys, we just messed it up. Golly gee, we couldn't develop the game on time. You know, that wouldn't look great. And so it's probably better to just, you know, keep the development going as it is, move the things over to DLC because they have to release the game on time, and then take the PR hit when people find, you know, empty areas that haven't been completed or other stuff on the disc, and just say, you know what, we're working on it. It's all part of the DLC and everything like that, because there's just no way for you to spin like we didn't get the game done on time to look good. Now, was this done maliciously? Was Destiny released half-built and then slap some DLC packs together just to squeeze as much dollars as they could out of fans? I've been talking for a while now about Bungie's personality. All that stuff, like I said, wasn't cooked up in some marketing boardroom. That's just how Bungie are. That's the way that they run things. And so the idea that all of a sudden they could go like full dark side and Jason Jones is like vadering out trying to squeeze every penny out of all the fans out there, like he just doesn't care about any of that anymore, I just find that very hard to believe. This is just another case of corporate or economic interest versus artistic or creative vision. And unfortunately, in this case, it seems as though the corporate interests won out a little bit. And there's not much you can do about that. I mean, again, I would imagine Jason Jones or whoever had to make that decision about the release of the game was in a very tough spot. I mean, I don't know what the penalties would have been for breaking Activision's contract, but I really, really doubt that Bungie would have been able to afford to pay them and keep all of their staff on just so that they could release Destiny in some other way or other form. I imagine that it was a tough call to make, and it just had to be made. It is unfortunate that the latest PR nightmare for Bungie revolves around DLC as well. Luke Smith's now infamous interview has caused quite a stir among the player base, and it seems that Bungie's attitudes towards making decisions based on what is best for players in the game might be changing. I'm not ready to throw Bungie under the bus just yet. I won't let one bad interview and a bit of poor pricing undo all the goodwill Bungie has demonstrated over the years. However, if this is a sign of Bungie's new direction or a shift in their attitude towards games driven either by the economic pressure from Activision or forces within the company itself, it is disappointing news. Destiny fans have already been very forgiving with Bungie, and I think to a certain extent, Bungie has paid that patience back in kind with changes and modifications that the fans have requested. However, it seems obvious that any community can be pushed too far, and if this is the straw that breaks the camel's back, I really hope that Bungie learns from their mistakes. I'd like to point out that this is all just my opinion. I don't know exactly how Destiny was developed or what roadblocks they did and didn't hit during the development. This is just sort of an educated guess. If you think I'm right, well then, why don't you drop a like at the bottom of the video? If you think I'm wrong, then drop a comment about how ugly I am under the video, because that always helps. Anyway, guys, thanks a lot for watching this video. I'm an Ulta1034, and I will see you next time. You get killed, so the Green Skull has to run over and save you. But a funny little glitch happened in this area. So Green comes over and picks the both of us up, but this captain is just not paying attention. I don't know what he's doing. He's smoking a cigarette, something like that. He just has no clue, and we're just about to destroy him.